Good afternoon. My name is Hardip, and I am here today to shed some light on how you can contribute to your health and safety at work. How many of you have ever had a work-related injury or illness? Well, you're not alone. In 2010, according to the Association of the Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, there were close to 250,000 work-related injuries, time loss injuries, and over 1,000 work-related deaths in Canada. Those cases and yours could have been prevented. The key is to promote health and safety amongst workers. And the way to do this is to provide them with the knowledge for them to protect themselves. I promise you that by the end of this presentation, you will have the information you need to promote your health and safety in the workplace. As an occupational health educator, I provide workers like you with information about the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which was designed for your protection. By the end of this presentation, you will understand your roles and your employer's roles in keeping you safe at work. So there's three important aspects of the Occupational Health and Safety Act that we will focus on today. They are workers' rights, employers' duties, and workers' duties. So you will see how these three interact to create a safe and effective everyday work practices. Let's start with your workers' rights. The first is the right to know about hazards and how they affect you. And you would be informed of these hazards through job-specific instruction and training. So let's say that you work with chemicals, then you would be given WHMIS training. You also have the right to participate. So this would mean the right to ask questions and the right to raise concerns about health and safety issues, either with your employer or supervisor or with a health and safety representative. And you should also be encouraged to become a health and safety representative or to join a committee if there is one. You also have the right to refuse dangerous work. So you can refuse to do any work that you feel would harm you or a fellow worker. And this danger might be present in the physical condition of the workplace, such as poor air quality or poor lighting. It may be equipment related, or you may simply just feel that you don't have enough instruction or training to do your job safely. So now that you know these rights, it's also important for you to realize that your employer has a duty to encourage you and to provide you with information to be able to exercise these rights. Now, that alone is not the only responsibility that your employer has. According to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there are other important duties. Let's take a look at some of them. Your employer must assign a competent person as a supervisor. So what this means is that the person that is your supervisor needs to be aware of the hazards related to your job and needs to be able to teach you how to perform your job safely. Your employer must also comply with standards that limit your exposure to biological, chemical, or physical agents. So there are governing bodies in place that limit the amount of exposure that you can have to these agents. And your employer must implement control measures to ensure that your exposure is not greater than these levels. And this might be done through various control measures, such as engineering controls, where if you're working with a chemical, they would be required to substitute it with something that's less toxic. If that's not feasible, they may put an exhaust fan in place to clear the air, and as a last resort, they might give you some protective equipment. Your employer must also create health and safety policies and procedures and make sure that they are followed by everyone. So let's say that you're hard at work and the fire alarm rings. Your employer should have a fire escape plan in place, and it should have been practiced with all employees such that everyone is able to exit the building safely. Now, your employer may be able to do all of these things, but you may still become injured or ill on the job. And that's because your employer is not the only workplace party that's responsible for your health and safety. You also play a very big role. So what are your duties as a worker? Well, you're required to report hazards and contraventions of the Occupational Health and Safety Act to your employer or a supervisor. So if you see something dangerous or see someone performing a dangerous act, you should report it immediately so that it can be taken care of as soon as possible. You should use or wear any protective devices that are required by your employer. And you should comply with the law and workplace health and safety policies and procedures. And part of this involves working and acting in a way that will not harm you or a fellow worker. So let's say, for instance, that you're behind in your work and your machine has a guard that you feel that if you were to remove that guard, you would be able to work faster. Well, not only is it a violation of the law for you to remove that guard, but you are also putting your life in danger. So as you can see, these three aspects of the Occupational Health and Safety Act are very important in creating safety in the workplace. Let's review them, shall we? You can rest assured that you will be free from harm at work by knowing and fighting for your rights as a worker, making sure your employer does what is required by the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and by following your own duties. So in the end, it is important for you to remember that your health and safety on the job rests in your hands. It is ultimately your responsibility to ensure that all workplace parties, including yourself, follow their duties so that everyone may return to their families safely after a hard day at work. Thank you.